Sayyid Ali Mohamud Shirazi was the founder of Babism, and one of three central figures of the Baha'i faith. He was a merchant from Shiraz, Persia who, at the age of 24, claimed to be an inspired interpreter of the Quran within the Shaikhi school of Twelver Shi'ism. He made bolder claims as time passed, and in 1847, during a trial in Tabriz, asserted a claim to be the Shi'i Promised One, or Qaim. After his declaration, he took the title of Bab, meaning gate or door. He composed numerous letters and books in which he stated his messianic claims and defined his teachings, which constituted a new Sharia or religious law. His movement eventually acquired thousands of supporters, was opposed by Iran's Shi'i clergy, and was suppressed by the Iranian government, leading to the persecution and killing of between 2,000 and 3,000 of his followers, called Babis. In 1850, at the age of 30, the Bab was shot by a firing squad in Tabriz. Baha'is claim that the Bab was also the spiritual return of Elijah and John the Baptist, that he was the Sayyid referred to in the Zoroastrian scriptures, and that he was the forerunner of their own religion. Baha'u'llah, the founder of the Baha'i faith, was a follower of the Bab and claimed to be the fulfillment of his promise that God would send another messenger. Early life. Sayyid Ali Mohamud Shirazi was born on October 20, 1819, in Shiraz to a middle-class merchant of the city. His father was Sayyid Muhammad Rida, and his mother was Fatima Begum, a daughter of a prominent merchant in Shiraz. His father died while he was quite young, and the boy was raised by his maternal uncle, Haji Mirza Sayyid Ali, who was also a merchant. He claimed to be a descendant from Muhammad through Imam Hussein through both his parents. When he was in Shiraz, his uncle sent him to Maktab and he was there for 6 or 7 years. Sometime between when he was 15 and 20, he joined his uncle in the family business, a trading house, and became a merchant in the city of Bushehr, Iran, near the Persian Gulf. Some of his earlier writings suggest that he did not enjoy the family business and instead applied himself to the study of religious literature. A contemporary described him as very taciturn, and he would never utter a word unless it was absolutely necessary. He did not even answer our questions. He was constantly absorbed in his own thoughts, and was preoccupied with repetition of his prayers and verses. He is described as a handsome man with a thin beard, dressed in clean clothes, wearing a green shawl and a black turban. An English physician described the young man by saying, "He was a very mild and delicate-looking man, rather small in stature and very fair for a Persian, with a melodious soft voice, which struck me much." Marriage. In 1842 he married Khadija Begum. He was 23 and she was 20. She was the daughter of a prominent merchant in Shiraz. The marriage proved to be a happy one, and they had one child, a boy named Ahmad who died the year he was born. The pregnancy jeopardized Khadija Begum's life, and she never conceived again. The young couple occupied a modest house in Shiraz along with the Bab's mother. Later, Khadija Begum became a Baha'i. The Shaikhi movement in the 1790s in Persia, Sheikh Ahmad began a religious movement within Shia Islam. His followers, who became known as Shaykhs, were expecting the imminent appearance of the Qaim of the House of Muhammad, also called the Mahdi. After the death of Sheikh Ahmad, leadership was passed on to Sayyid Kazim of Rasht. In 1841, the Bab went on pilgrimage to Iraq, and for 7 months stayed mostly in and around Karbala. There he is believed to have met the leader of the Shaykhs, Sayyid Kazim, who showed a high regard for him. He is believed to have attended some of Sayyid Kazim's lectures. However, this period is almost entirely undocumented. As of his death in December 1843, Sayyid Kazim had counseled his followers to leave their homes to seek the Mahdi, who, according to his prophecies, would soon appear. One of these followers, named Mullah Hussein, after keeping vigil for 40 days in a mosque, traveled to Shiraz, where he met the Bab. Declaration to Mullah Hussein, the Bab's first religious inspiration experience, claimed, witnessed by his wife, is dated to about the evening of April 3. The Bab's first public connection with his sense of a mission came with the arrival of Mullah Hussein in Shiraz. On the night of May 22, 1844, Mullah Hussein was invited by the Bab to his home. On that night, Mullah Hussein told him that he was searching for the possible successor to Sayyid Kazim, the Promised One. The Bab told Mullah Hussein that he was Sayyid Kazim's successor and the bearer of divine knowledge. After some consideration, Mullah Hussein became the first to accept the Bab's claims to be an inspired figure and a likely successor to the late Shaikhi leader, Sayyid Kazim Rashti. The Bab had replied satisfactorily to all of Mullah Hussein's questions and had written in his presence, with extreme rapidity, a long commentary of Surah of Joseph, which has come to be known as the Qayyimul Azma, and is considered the Bab's first revealed work. Letters of the Living. Mullah Hussein was the Bab's first disciple. Within 5 months, 17 other disciples of Sayyid Kazim had independently recognized the Bab as a manifestation of God. Among them was one woman, Fatima Zareen Taj Barahani, a poetess, who later received the name of Tahiri. These 18 disciples were later to be known as the Letters of the Living and were given the task of spreading the new faith across Iran and Iraq. The Bab emphasized the spiritual station of these 18 individuals, who, along with himself, made the first unity of his religion has a numerical value of 19 using abjad numerals. The Bab, in his book The Persian Bayan, gives the metaphorical identity of the Letters of the Living as the 14 infallibles in Shia Islam and the 4 archangels. In some ways, they parallel the 12 apostles of Christ. Proclamation. In his early writings, the Bab appears to identify himself as the gate to the hidden 12th Imam, and later he begins explicitly to proclaim in his station as that of the hidden Imam and a new messenger from God, rather than being a discontinued or evolving consciousness. Saidi states that the works of the Bab are unitary throughout, and that the gradual disclosure of the Bab's identity is defined by the principle of unity and diversity throughout reality. In the Bab's early writings, the exalted identity he was claiming was unmistakable, but because of the reception of the people, his writings appear to convey the impression that he is only the gate to the hidden 12th Imam. To his circle of early believers, the Bab was equivocal about his exact status, gradually confiding in them that he was not merely a gate to the hidden Imam, but the manifestation of the hidden Imam in the Qaim himself. During his early meetings with Mullah Hussein, the Bab described himself as the Master and the Promised One. He did not consider himself to be simply Sayyid Kazim's successor, but claimed a prophetic status, a kind of deputy, delegated not just by the hidden Imam but through divine authority. His early texts, such as the commentary on the Surah of Joseph, used Quranic language that implied divine authority and identified himself effectively with the Imam. When Mullah Ali Bastami, the second Letter of the Living, was put on trial in Baghdad for preaching about the Bab, clerics studied the commentary on the Surah of Joseph, recognized in it a claim to divine revelation, and quoted from it extensively to prove that the author had made a messianic claim. However, in the early phase of his declaration to the public, the title Bab was emphasized as that of the gate leading to the hidden Imam, as the Bab had told his early believers not to fully disclose his claims or reveal his name. The approach of laying claim to a lower position was intended to create a sense of anticipation for the appearance of the hidden Imam. After a couple of months, as the Bab observed further acceptance and readiness among his believers and the public, he gradually shifted his public claim to that of the hidden Imam. Then in his final years he publicly announced his station as a manifestation of God. In his trial, he boldly proclaimed himself in the presence of the heir to the throne of Persia and other notables, to be the promised one. In the early months of his public declarations, the adoption of a cautious policy had essentially achieved maximum attention with minimum controversy. The gradual unfolding of his claims, however, did cause some confusion, both among the public and for some of his believers. A number of his early followers had instantly recognized his station as a messenger from God with divine authority, and this resulted in disagreement within the Babi community. Furthermore, even though the Bab had intended to convey his message with discretion, many of his followers openly declared the coming of the promised hidden Imam and Mahdi. Travels and imprisonment. After the 18 letters of the living had recognized him, the Bab in the 18th letter of the living, Qudus, left on a pilgrimage to Mecca and Medina, the sacred cities of Islam. At the Kaaba in Mecca, the Bab publicly declared his claim to be the Qaim. He also wrote to the Sharif of Mecca, the custodian of the Kaaba, proclaiming his mission. After their pilgrimage, the Bab and Qudus returned to Bushehr, Iran. After some time, preaching by the letters of the living led to opposition by the Islamic clergy, prompting the governor of Shiraz to order the Bab's arrest. The Bab, upon hearing of the arrest order, left Bushehr for Shiraz in June 1845 and presented himself to the authorities. He was placed under house arrest at the home of his uncle until a cholera epidemic broke out in the city in September 1846. The Bab was released and departed for Isfahan. There, many came to see him at the house of the Imam Jumi, head of the local clergy, who became sympathetic. After an informal gathering where the Bab debated the local clergy and displayed his speed in producing instantaneous verses, his popularity soared. After the death of the governor of Isfahan, Manucher Khan Gorgi, who had become his supporter, pressure from the clergy of the province led to the Shah, Mohamud Shirazi, ordering the Bab to Tehran in January 1847. After spending several months in a camp outside Tehran, and before the Bab could meet the Shah, the Prime Minister sent the Bab to Tabriz in the northwestern corner of the country, where he was confined. After 40 days in Tabriz, the Bab was then transferred to the fortress of Marku in the province of Azerbaijan close to the Turkish border. During his incarceration there, the Bab began his most important work, the Persian Bayan, which he never finished. Because of the Bab's growing popularity in Marku and the governor of Marku converting, the Prime Minister transferred him to the fortress at Sharik in April 1848. In that place as well, the Bab's popularity grew, and his jailers relaxed restrictions on him. It was at this time that Aq Bala Big Shishvani Naqshbandi painted the portrait of the Bab. Hence the Prime Minister ordered the Bab back to Tabriz, where the government called on religious authorities to put the Bab on trial for blasphemy and apostasy. The trial, attended by the Crown Prince, occurred in July 1848 and involved numerous local clergy. They questioned the Bab about the nature of his claims, his teachings, and demanded that he produce miracles to prove his divine authority. They admonished him to recant his claims. There are 9 extant eyewitness reports of the trial, of which several may originate from an earlier source. 6 of the reports are from Muslim accounts, and portray the Bab in an unfavorable light. There are 62 questions that are found in the 9 sources, however 18 occur in only one source, 15 in 2, 8 in 3, 5 in 4, 13 in 5, and 3 in 6. Not including yes, and he did not answer. There are 35 answers, of which 10 occur in one source, 8 in 2, 6 in 3, 3 in 4, 2 in 5, 5 in 6. Only one answer is found in all 9 eyewitness sources, where the Bab states that, "I am that person you have been awaiting for 1,000 years." The trial did not bring a decisive result. Some clergy called for capital punishment, but the government pressured them to issue a lenient judgment because the Bab was popular. The government asked medical experts to declare the Bab insane so that he could not be executed. It is also likely that the government, to appease the religious clergy, spread rumors that the Bab had recanted. The Sheikh al-Islam, the champion of the anti-Babi campaign, who was not at the Bab's trial, issued a conditional death sentence if the Bab was found to be sane. A fatwa was issued establishing the Bab's apostasy and stated, "The repentance of an incorrigible apostate is not accepted, and the only thing which has caused the postponement of thy execution is a doubt as to thy sanity of mind." The Crown Prince's physician, William Cormac, examined the Bab and complied with the government's request to find grounds for clemency. The physician's opinion saved the Bab from execution for a time, but the clergy insisted that he face corporal punishment instead, so the Bab was bastinadoed. The official report states that because of his harsh beating, the Bab recanted, apologized, and stated that he would not continue to advance claims of divinity. While various government sources indicate that the Bab recanted his claim, there is little non-governmental evidence of their validity. Some theorize that the assertions were made to embarrass the Bab and undermine his credibility with the public. There exists an unsigned and undated document that was supposedly written shortly after the Bab's trial in Tabriz where the Bab recants his claims to a divine station. But the language of this document is very different from the Bab's usual style. It could have been prepared by the authorities, but the Bab refused to sign it. The Bab was finally ordered back to the fortress at Sharik. Execution. In mid-1850 a new Prime Minister, Amir Kabir, ordered the execution of the Bab, probably because various Babi insurrections had been defeated and the movement's popularity appeared to be waning. The Bab was brought back to Tabriz from Sharik, so that he could be shot by a firing squad. The night before his execution, as he was being conducted to his cell, a young Babi, Muhammad Ali Izunuzi, called Anas, threw himself at the feet of the Bab and begged to be killed with him. He was immediately arrested and placed in the same cell as the Bab. On the morning of July 9, 1850, the Bab was taken to the courtyard of the barracks in which he was being held, where thousands of people had gathered to watch his execution. The Bab and Anas were suspended on a wall and a large firing squad of Christian soldiers prepared to shoot. Numerous eyewitness reports, including those of Western diplomats, recount the result. The order was given to fire and the barracks square filled with musket smoke. When it cleared, the Bab was no longer in the courtyard and his companions stood there unharmed. The bullets apparently had not harmed either man, but had cut the ropes suspending him from the wall. There was a great commotion, many in the crowd believing the Bab had ascended to heaven or simply disappeared, but the soldiers subsequently found the Bab in another part of the barracks, completely unharmed, giving his final instructions to his secretary. He and Anas were tied up for execution a second time. A second firing squad of Muslim soldiers was ranged in front of them, and a second order to fire was given. This time, the Bab and his companion were killed. In the Babi Baha'i tradition, the failure of the first firing squad to kill the Bab is believed to have been a miracle. Their remains were dumped outside the gates of the town to be eaten by animals. The remains, however, were clandestinely rescued by a handful of Babis and were hidden. Over time the remains were secretly transported according to instructions of Baha'u'llah and then Abd al-Baha by way of Isfahan, Kermanshah, Baghdad and Damascus, to Beirut and thence by sea to Acre on the plain below Mount Carmel, Indiana. 1899. On March 21, 1909, the remains were then interred in a special tomb, erected for this purpose by Abd al-Baha, on Mount Carmel, Indiana, present-day Haifa, Israel. The Baha'i World Center is located close to this site and visitors are welcome to tour the gardens.